Morning to Mary. How is it going?
Good, Suborno. How are you?
I'm very, very well. I'm so pleased to have you on the show. You were another person that was recommended to me, actually, and so far I've not been disappointed. So I'm really looking forward to this.
I'll live up to it, hopefully.
I'm sure you will. I'm sure you will. And well, before we begin and sort of get stuck into it, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, so my name's Tamari, and I'm a professional astrologer. I feel like astrology is super trending right now, so most people know about it. But when I first started really studying deeply, it wasn't so popular.
Yeah.
Um,
How long
I-
ago was that?
15 years ago, when I first started seriously studying natal charts, which I'll explain in a second. But I've always been into astrology and mystical things my entire life. And when I graduated from college, I was having a little bit of like an internal crisis. I've had a lot of crises in my life. But I was working in the office in Beverly Hills here in LA and in a marketing company. And the manager of these two astrologers called the Astro Twins walked in, and they do like a lot of celebrity readings, or they did at the time. And they looked at me and they're like, "You're either a Taurus or a Scorpio." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm a Taurus," but come to find out I had a Scorpio rising or ascendant sign. And I'm like, "How can they look at me and just figure that out?" And I was so intrigued. And so I started studying like crazy, and just doing it for fun, like reading all these books and practicing charts on friends and family members. And this went on for years. And my Capricorn boyfriend at the time was like, "Why are you doing this for free? You need to get paid."
Mm.
And so I didn't believe in myself as much, and I had always been I also work in the beauty industry. I'm a director of product development for a skincare line. So I'm always like, have this professional world, but all this mysticism people never understood, or it was like I was always like the weird one that wanted to talk about things or tarot cards and all those things. And I was like, you know what, forget it. So I started a business, and I would always talk about it with coworkers and things. And so I started doing astrology readings for people. And basically what I do is I take the moment they were born, so the time, the date, the location, and you cast what's called a natal chart. And it basically is a snapshot of how the planets look at the moment you were born, like where they were in relation to each other. And they all talk to each other. They all have different energies. And so from that, I can extract so much information. I don't even need to know the person. I usually don't like to know them.
Mm.
And I can tell them about their life, like what their strengths are, what their weaknesses, I don't like to call them weaknesses, but challenges,
Mm.
um, who they might be attracted to, what kind of marriage partner they might have, what type, how they are in love relationships. And I find that most people come to me for love advice. So everyone only comes for career and love. It's either when will I get married? What type of partner should I be with? I just went through a breakup. So most of my practice, or a lot of it, is spent on love, the topic of love,
Mm.
which is important to me because I have an interesting love journey as well. So that's kind of what I do in a nutshell from the astrology standpoint. And I'm actually also a Reiki practitioner, and Reiki is a form of energy healing.
Mm.
So I help people kind of clear any blockages they might have around, attracting love or self-worth, because obviously our relationships are a reflection of how we are internally.
Mm. Mm.
Um, I use oracle cards. I
What
do a lot
are
of,
oracle cards? I've not heard of those.
yeah, they're like, oh, I have like over 30 decks around here, but they're just like, oracle. They provide information. The tarot cards are not technically oracle cards, but I use tarot as well. Oracle sometimes are just symbols or messages that people need. And, I'm divining from spirit and giving them a message through the card, if that makes sense. So
Okay.
yeah, so that was a lot of talking, but that's what I do in a
Well, you do a
nutshell.
lot, so it makes sense.
Yeah,
So out of interest, you know how you said people will come to you and they want to find out when they're going to get married.
yeah.
In those interactions, what is their expectation? Are they actually expecting you to give them a date, or just to confirm that they will get married? What's could you just talk us through that sort of situation, please?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's actually a mix of all of that. So in my astrology practice, I'm not big on fortune telling. So I feel like people like, when is this going to happen? I
Mm.
can tell you when the energy is the best, but I feel like we still have free will as humans. Like we're living in the experience, but ultimately we can make our own choices. So I think sometimes we work against our own best interests. So if I tell you this is an opportune time to meet your partner, but you're still, you know, screwing around with all these random people and you're not
Yeah.
really committed, like you're not going to meet, you're not going to be tied down. So people come to me a lot for timing. So I can tell them, well, you might be having a transit, and a transit is when like where the planets are today, like where are the planets located today and how are they reacting to your chart. So you might have a more opportune time to meet someone, or maybe you're in a Venus year in your perfections, which is another traditional technique. And I can say, okay, the focus is going to be on love, but I don't like to give specific dates because I feel like we can always change our outcome.
Mm.
A lot of times people want to know if they're going to get married. And I can say, look, you're going to have challenges in relationships. It will be harder for you, but I would never tell someone, no, you can't get married, or no, you won't be happy in a relationship. I would just never do that. You know, it's not productive for them. And who am I to say that? I'm just here to give you information so that you can hopefully live your best life.
Mm. Mm. And I suppose, because you must have to be really thoughtful about the language you use, because say for example, if someone's coming to you for, you know, relationship advice, or they want to know about if they're going to get married, I guess it's dangerous for you. Obviously there's only so much you can do, in that it's not like you can guarantee that they will get married. And like
Yeah.
you say, it's up to the participant or the individual to take on the information you give them and behave in a certain way. Like you say, if they're still, I don't know, screwing around, having one night stands, and it's like, well, you're not really creating the environment based on your advice to go meet a long-term partner to get
Yeah.
married. So trying to, you know, align all these moving parts from your side must be very difficult, even though they've come to you for advice. But if they're not listening to it, then what's the point?
Exactly. And I feel like I get a lot of people that don't listen.
Mm.
Because I mean, if you think about it, and I'm a person that believes in consulting people. Like I still see spiritual advisors myself. Like
Mm.
I'm, you know, I definitely know that I have a gift, but I still like to get a second opinion. But I think if you're not going to take the advice of the person, then what is the point? Like you're getting in your own way, right? So a lot of people I find end up making the same mistakes over and over sometimes, even, and I can see it in the chart. I'm like, well, they have a hard time learning lessons.
Yeah.
But think about it, that's why you're paying me to give you advice. So maybe try something different than the way you're usually used to
Mm.
doing it.
Mm.
Because we keep doing the same thing, we're going to get the same outcome. If you're having challenges with dating and love, a lot of it is the climate that we live in. We live in a very instant gratification, swipe right, you know, type of environment, but a lot of it is our own fault.
Yeah.
A lot of times when we're having challenges in relationship, it starts from within, and we have to look at what we're doing to contribute to the fact that we're not getting the outcome what we want, which is a committed, healthy relationship.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, yeah. So there's only, I guess, there's only so much you can personally hold someone's hand. You know, like with other coaches as well. You know, you can advise, you can consult, but you can't force the person to, I don't know, go on a better dating website or download a better app or whatever, or behave differently. There's only so much you can advise them, and then the rest is the responsibility of the person to either take on board what you've said and move forward, or just, like you say, stay in the same position and remain stagnant.
Exactly. And because and there's so many variables, right, to finding a good relationship.
Mm.
Like the timing has to be right. So timing is you actually meeting that person, but the work begins when you're actually in the actual relationship, and how you show up there is a reflection of how you are internally. So like using myself as an example, relationships have always been really important to me, more so when I like after college, and I've always been in relationships. I would say from 19 to, I'm married now, but before then it was, even at 19 I had like my first serious relationship that lasted 7 years. And my Venus is in Aries. I'm a Taurus sun, and Taurus is ruled by Venus, the planet of love, and you're Libra, so you're also ruled by Venus. And so relationships in general and harmony are important to me, but my Venus is in Aries where it's not comfortable, and it's considered to be what's called in detriment in Aries. And Aries is ruled by Mars, which is fighting. So a lot of times in my relationships, even though I'm a very nice person, like I feel like I'm a very neutral. I get along with people very easily.
Mm.
In my relationships, I was showing up aggressive because I
Right.
have Venus and Aries, fighting spirit. If I hear something you say to me that I don't like, well, I'll lash out, like, no, well, you just said this to me. And like very argumentative, which most people will be like, well, Tamari's not really like that. But that's how I show up in my relationships.
Mm.
And so for me, the studying of astrology and studying of all these different, getting to really know myself through my chart, which is where it all starts when you really are into astrology, I can bring awareness to that behavior, right? And I can correct it.
Mm.
So that's what I'm really trying to help people do I won't just point out a problem without giving you a solution. If
Yeah.
I see your Venus is in Scorpio, and Venus also doesn't do well in Scorpio, and you're very controlling, or you're dramatic, or you're very emotional, and you want
Mm.
all or nothing in your partnerships, I'm going to tell you, you should try not to be that way. Like, it's always going to be with you, but you can do things to kind of mitigate that energy in your chart, and then you show up better to a partner, and then you'll attract people that don't want to fight with you or aren't that way as well. So it's a lot of like factors going on in the chart at one time. But when it comes to love, I really try to get specific and give them examples of how they can be more successful in their partnerships.
Mm. Mm. So just to ask you kind of a personal question, because I think you
Yeah.
alluded to it a little bit earlier. Did you start studying charts and finding out more about them to try and find out more about yourself?
Oh, absolutely. That's where it all started for me. I actually had a chart reading when I was an infant, when I had a naming ceremony. My dad's friend, who's like a spiritual practitioner, did a chart for me. So throughout my life, there was all these things my dad would say, oh, you're not supposed to do this because he said
Mm.
this at that time. And then when I was met those astrologers, and I was in a relationship at the time with, like, I guess my college sweetheart. We didn't go to college together, but we were together during college. And there was a way that I was showing up in that relationship. There was a way that I was talking to myself. There was all these things I was dealing with. And I had a lot of trauma when I was younger. My mother committed suicide when I was 13. And so that affected how I showed up, because I have abandonment issues, right? And I'm going deep really quick. I like just
No,
laid
it's
that.
cool, and that I think it's really important to discuss because yeah, there are obviously lots of
Yeah.
people that don't have the mother or caregiver figure to look after them, and to lose yours at such a young age, like it's yeah, it is traumatizing, and it's important to discuss if you're comfortable doing so.
Oh, I'm totally comfortable because it's a part of my story, and I feel like
Mm.
if it helps anyone, I'll tell it.
Yeah.
So for me, like that whole issue of trust, when you lose someone that is your protector. My mother was a very good, stable person. Like, for her to do something like that was, no one would have ever guessed that. So to lose your mother in that way, obviously that's going to give you commitment issues. It's going to give you trust
Mm.
issues,
So you didn't
intimacy.
see it coming or anything?
No one saw it coming. It was the biggest shock of our family. It completely changed our family dynamic.
Yeah. And did
Um,
you lay some blame with yourself then because
for
it was so
sure.
surprising? Right. Yeah.
Absolutely. Because you're like, well, how would you do this? And it wasn't about, clearly she wasn't in a good mental space. And
Mm.
so you, as children, I have a brother too, you blame yourself. And so that's a very complex thing to navigate. And when you don't, I remember my grandmother wanted me to go to therapy, and I was like, I'm fine. Because I had just started high school, and I just threw myself into like friends and the cheerleading squad, and I just covered it up with just achieving. And so I never dealt with those emotions. And so fast forward to, I'm 19 and I'm in this serious relationship, and I meet this person on a whim, and we're both young, and then I'm starting my career, and I'm like, there was just a lot of sadness that I experienced during that time. And so the astrology came in, and getting to know myself through my chart, it gave me, there's an astrologer that I still take astrology classes. I'm always learning. And so there's astrologer that I was talking, I was in her class like a couple weeks ago, and she said, people, when she does people's charts, someone said, you've given me permission to be myself. And that is so powerful when you think about it, because astrology is just really explaining to people through their chart who they are. And so when you realize this is who I am, you can start to accept yourself, versus why is all this always happening to me? So for me, astrology really explained so many things that had occurred in my life. And so it all started with me getting to know myself. And then once I felt like, wow, this is so powerful for me, I need to share this with other people. That's when I started like doing it for my friends and my family and getting everyone's birth times. And this was before all those astrology apps were out. This was before, I feel like YouTube was like maybe just starting. So like astrology has been popular over the centuries, but now we're in another boom.
Yeah.
So for me, it was important to kind of get the message out and help people through their charts.
Yeah. Okay. So just to bring up a couple of points there. I mean, the first one is just to highlight something in that, you said obviously you've been through this traumatizing experience with your mother, and your reaction was to, you mentioned about cheerleading and you were getting stuck into various things, which, it's kind of like a classical avoidant reaction. Rather than facing the problem, you just invest all your time into something else. And I've been there and done it myself as well. If there's like something I don't want to confront, it's just like, right, I'm just going to start practicing this hobby or whatever, just relentlessly, because I don't want to breathe to try and face up to the problem at hand. And I think the experience you've discussed is something that is reflected by so many people, a lot of whom, which is sad to say, still won't admit, but it's difficult if you haven't had that pointed out for you. If someone had said to you at the time, you do realize you're taking up all these things because you don't want to confront what's happened,
Yeah.
then you'd be like, oh yeah, okay, that's a fair point. But obviously you're a kid at the time, so you're dealing with a lot already.
Yeah.
um, and then the other question I had was, before before you were 19, had you had any inclination that astrology was a thing of yours that you would like to pursue? What had been your experiences before then, and what was your inspiration for taking it up, on such a deep level later on?
Yeah, I love that question. I think the occult and things that were hidden and like taboo to other people have always been interesting to me, including astrology. So astrology was like frequently talked about in my household. So it was like, even growing up, that was like a normal thing for us to talk about that. And like I said, my dad had my chart done when I was a baby.
Mm.
So yeah, there was always little clues. And then when I was in sixth grade, I'm not sixth grade, sorry, second grade, at my elementary school, before we started recording, we talked about how I live really close to my
Mm.
elementary school. My second grade class, my friend asked me, "What's your sign? What's your zodiac sign?" And I was like 6, I think.
Mm.
And I was like, "What is that?" Like, I didn't even know what it was. And I went home and asked my dad, and he like showed me like the constellation. We had like this constellation picture in our garage, and he was like, explain things to me. And so that was like my first introduction to like to the zodiac. And the fact that that memory is so vivid for me, because I don't really have good memory. I can memorize, like you told me you're a Libra. I will never forget that. Like I have like my memory is like useless. Like I'll remember random things.
I'll take that as a compliment then.
Yeah, but like I'll never forget that about you. So like that was so significant, such a significant memory. And then throughout my life, there was always this attraction to like, you know, tarot or just, you know, psychics or just mystical things. And I have a lot of Scorpio energy in my chart. I have a Scorpio rising, I have Saturn in Scorpio, I have Pluto in Scorpio, I have Mars in Scorpio, which is kind of that water esoteric type of thing. And then my Aquarius moon is very weird and kind of a trailblazer and someone that doesn't like to conform. But then I have this really traditional Taurus moon. So it's very complex in how my personality comes out through my chart. But I got my first tarot cards when I was 17 on a trip to New Orleans. So like I was always into like just different things that I think are more popular now and more accepted now. But for me back then, it was something I kept very private about myself.
Yeah.
So I think I got little signs along the way. I never thought I would be a professional astrologer and I never planned that when I was a kid though, you know?
Yeah. Did you ever have an interest in magic?
Oh, I still have an interest,
Okay.
interest in magic. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I have so many books on it too. And so like, it's not something that I'm always doing, but I'm very much about creating rituals and kind of creating the outcome that you want within reason, right? Because like when it gets to like trying to control other people and things like that, like I think that's just not cool. But if it's something that's going to make you feel better, like when my clients are struggling with money or they're struggling with love, like I'll sometimes give them rituals to do, whether it's candles or certain things that they should do. And it makes you feel better. And whether people believe it works or not, there is a placebo effect. That doesn't matter to me. If it works for you, then that's a positive thing. And so I really feel that I manifested my husband and my relationship and my marriage, because I put a lot of energy into that. And I would do rituals, or I would write things on the new moon, every new moon, about who I wanted to attract into my life. And my husband had all the qualities of what I was asking for. So I feel like we can create that. And I even have a course on my website called Manifest a Love Partner, because I feel like you're consciously calling in the type of relationship you want versus letting it happen to you, you know?
Yeah. And just out of interest, so you said when you were 6, your dad had your chart made.
When I was a baby. When
Okay.
I was an infant, yeah. But I didn't know, like he would tell me things when I got older. I didn't understand this. I had a naming ceremony when I was young. And so that's when it was done. And when I was 6, I asked him about the zodiac and he kind of explained to me what it was.
Well, I was just wondering, yeah, if you could do that for us, if you could, tell us about, say, your first memory of, seeing your chart or understanding what your chart was, and also telling us whilst you're saying this exactly what is on a chart so people can know.
Yeah. I
Because I
feel
think
like
that's
I can even share it on my screen if that is helpful.
well, yeah, if it's quite easy to do that, that would be great.
Let's just do that. I'll pull up my own chart just so not to violate any client chart. Just because it's cool to see, right?
Yeah. I'm just thinking if I need to. Oh, okay, there we go. So you should have the power to be
I
able
have
to share.
oh, I love the power. Ooh,
Oh, yes. Okay.
I'm gonna take her chart down and show mine so you guys can see. So this is my old software. I'm using new software now, but
Yeah.
this is just for visual. So this is essentially how the chart looks. Imagine this being Earth, and this is a geocentric perspective, right? We all know we're just a speck in the universe.
Yeah. The circle in the center is Earth, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so how we're viewing the planets moving, obviously we go around the sun, but it looks like the sun is going around us. So this represents a horizon line. And so anything above this in the chart is kind of what's visible to others. And below is kind of more secretive, or not secretive, but more personal to you. And so even by seeing where the planets are laid in a person's chart, I can kind of see whether they're more of like a everything that they do is visible to others, or if it's not. And so your rising sign over here, and do you actually know your birth time?
No, I can't remember it, I'm afraid. I think it's the morning. I'm
But
pretty
you
sure.
don't know the exact time. I was going to
No.
say we could look at your chart. We can still look at it without the time if you want to look at it.
Yeah, go for it.
Where you're born in?
So it would be Stockport, but if that isn't recognised,
In the UK?
yes.
Okay.
Oh yeah, there we go.
No.
Yeah,
And then you
that's the
said your
one.
birthday was 10, was it 19?
16/10/82. So 16th of October 1982. Yeah, I forgot we have different ways of doing it, isn't it? And I'm sure it's between it's like 7 and 8 in the morning. I'm pretty sure, but I'll just have to double check that.
We'll put that, it's not exact, so we'll just see what comes up. And if that resonates with you, then by all means, that's great. But if not,
Yeah,
I like
I've got something to ask my mum tomorrow anyway.
Oh, good. Yeah. So let's see. Okay. So I write on the back, look at all these planets here. So if you are born, even if you were born probably at 8, you still might be a Libra rising. So this area of your chart is it's called the ascendant or the rising sign. And imagine it of the driver of your car of your life. If your life was in a car and the where you're going is the destiny of your life, the driver would be Libra for you if you're a Libra rising, which I'm thinking you might be. You could be a Scorpio, right? We'll see. But you have all these planets in Libra, which is unique. So you have the sun in Libra, your Libra sun, you have Venus in Libra, which is about love. You have your moon in Libra, you have your Mercury in Libra, Saturn in Libra, and Pluto in Libra. So you do have all of these planets in Libra. You're like a super Libra.
Keep talking. I like this language.
So for you, Libra is cardinal Earth. So cardinal in astrology means taking action. Cardinal signs are the signs that start the seasons. So that would be Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. When we're in those seasons, we have a change, right? So we go from summer to fall. And so we go from Virgo season to fall, and the start of fall is the start of Libra season. So right on the bat, that tells me you're a person that takes initiative. You're a person that likes to get things moving. You just kind of maybe act, but you have a lot of planets in Libra, an astronomical amount of them. So you actually waver back and forth in your mind on things a lot. Even though you want to take action, you still kind of like, oh, but then, and you think about all the possible outcomes because you're trying to find this balance. You're trying to find, okay, how should I move forward? Justice and the right thing is probably important to you. Being fair is probably really important to you. The nice things, being comfortable, so being surrounded by things you love. You probably don't like to be uncomfortable. All of those things are really, really important to you. With all these Libra. And I would say partnerships. So it's interesting that you have this podcast about relationships when there's so many planets in Libra, and Libra rules relationships because Libra is the sign of relationships. So it's almost like you're very much doing what you should be doing by helping people in this avenue. Yeah. So, and there's so many, I mean, you have Jupiter in Scorpio, and Jupiter is how you create your luck in your life, or where kind of luck comes through. So honestly, luck might come to you through more esoteric type things, or synchronicity, or people, how we were connected, just through a recommendation, like a synchronistic type of situation. You have Mars in Sagittarius, and Mars can represent sexuality also in your chart. But it shows like where you like to take action, and it's in a fire sign for you. So again, that action and moving forward is really important to you, and also having interest in things, maybe science or obtaining knowledge. I would say knowledge for you is very important, like being inquisitive about a lot of different subjects probably. And with the Libra focus, you can be very brilliant. You can really master something if you put your energy into it. So yeah, I wish I had your exact time, because then I'd feel more comfortable making definite statements about things. But that's just kind of just, a snapshot and a quick overview.
Okay. Before I either confirm or deny what you've said, is there anything else you can add, or is that the main crux of the information? Because obviously we're trying to help millennials with dating and relationships. So can you make any comments on my personal dating and relationship life?
So for you, I would say relationships are actually very, very important to you. The thing, your Libra, your Venus. So when I look at relationships, I always look at your Venus sign. Your Venus is in Libra, and Venus rules Taurus and Libra. So your Venus is at home where it is. That can be a strength, but sometimes it can be a challenge from my perspective, because Venus in Libra expects things to go smoothly in relationships. It wants ease. It wants harmony. It kind of sometimes idealizes how relationships should be, Libra being an air sign. So you might have particular beliefs around how relationships are supposed to be. So when it doesn't go that way, or when it doesn't work out that way, it can be really disheartening to you, because you don't want any conflict. So let's say you're in a relationship with someone, and everything starts out smooth and it's nice, and you're going to, maybe you're going to the movies together, or you're going to art galleries, and you're fine dining, and you're doing all these nice Libra things and just enjoying each other. But then that person, you see a side of them that's maybe not harmonious. Maybe they have a big issue and they have an emotional outburst or something that makes you really uncomfortable. It can kind of burst the bubble on that person for you. So instead of seeing the relationship as good, it might kind of throw some salt on it to where it's like, oh, I don't know, should I be with this person? You know what I mean? Because
Mm.
everything, it's almost like you're more wanting things to go smoothly all the time, or you're wanting things to be easy most of the time. And so when they're not, it can be a little bit challenging for you, especially if it's someone who has a lot of like fire energy in their chart, or they're very combative, or they're very aggressive. Like that might end up being a turnoff for you, because you maybe want more harmony in your relationships. Some people are attracted to drama.
Mm.
Some people are attracted to, they like shakeups and they like fighting, or they like, that's sexy to them. They want to fight and make up. I wouldn't say that about you. So I think it's important for you, and I don't know if you're in a relationship or not. It's important for you to have someone that's kind of on that same vibe with you.
Mm, mm. Okay, so this is really fascinating. So I'll try and remember the points that you made, but you mentioned how all the planets were in that particular segment, which
Yeah.
meant, a Libra would be, because you said that there was an unusual number of planets there as
Oh
well.
yeah. Yeah, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 planets in Libra. I'm not counting these because these aren't planets. So
Okay.
6 planets in one sign, that's called a stellium. A stellium is when there's like 3 or more planets in one sign, really. And there's an intense focus on that energy in your life, in that area of your life. And so if your chart is correct, or the timing, that means there would be a lot of focus on yourself and self-development, and how you show up in relationships, and thinking about how relationships affect you and how you can be more harmonious in your life. Like a lot of focus on yourself and self-development. And anytime there's a transit, so let's do where there's planets moving across this area, you're always going to have an issue of self coming up during that time. Right now, Venus would be transiting your first house, but let's say these planets were all here. I could say, oh, you're having really an identity crisis. There's a structure happening that's breaking down your belief systems and your thoughts, and all of those things are being challenged. So that's kind of how it works. Like I look at your chart, I look at what's going on. There's all different types of charts I
Mm.
pull up depending on what the need is or what the people are coming to me for. But essentially, I'm looking at both your chart and then the planets where they are today.
Yeah, and yeah, because that was the question I was going to ask. How do you do it by the time of year?
So it's important. Oh, you mean like today on November 14th? Like how do I know
Exactly. Yes.
that
Yeah.
happened? So because the planets are in a different location than they were when you were born. So this never changes, right? But our chart does progress a little bit. There's a thing called like progressions, where you're obviously, we never stay the same people. We learn different lessons. And so you progress into a different area of your life. There's a thing called zodiacal releasing that kind of looks at your chart in chapters and like what might be the themes that time. There's a thing called perfections where I can see what the year would be like for you. Then there's the transits. These are transits. This is like, what are the planets doing today and how are they speaking to your chart? So this Venus right here is making what's called a square to your midheaven, which is career. So you kind of mix those two things. Venus in Libra being partnership, harmony, being in conflict with your career. Maybe is there a conflict going on at work, or like there's all these things. And obviously when I'm talking to the client, I kind of narrow in because I have my first thoughts. Astrology is about possibility and probability. That's why I'm not big on exact fortune telling, because Venus represents a host of things in astrology.
Yeah.
The
So based on what you've seen or said just then, you said there was a conflict in career. Do you have an inkling as to what that conflict is,
So
or
this
is
could
that
be an
too much?
internal. This could be internal because it's the first house. So maybe you could be thinking, is it time for me to make a pivot and do something that's more harmonious, Libra and Venus, with my career and where it's going? Um, what am I thinking of? How do I want to be seen in the world long term? This part of your chart represents not only career, it's like your reputation. It's kind of like a legacy point. What legacy do I want to leave behind? What am I doing long term in the world? For
Mm.
you, if this time is right, that would be Cancer. So really helping people, nurturing people, being a service. And so with this Venus transit, and Venus is called a benefic in astrology. It's a helpful planet. So even when there's a challenge there, it's not going to be necessarily very disruptive. It's just more of like, how can I be a little bit more, how can I create more harmony in my career? How can I create more ease? And because you have so many planets in Libra, Venus is really important to you. So that's kind of how it works. And then I see, oh, this Mars is over here in the seventh house. Maybe there's some issues going on in your relationships. Like if you were married or if you have a serious relationship, have you been having conflict recently? Because
Mm.
Mars is fighting and action and aggression. It's in Aries, that sign that it rules. And that's very impulsive action, very impulsive aggression. And it doesn't always play out that way, right? All planets have both positive and negative aspects to them. But then if Mars is in your seventh and it's opposing, which looks like your ascendant, if your ascendant was the correct time, that means there's a conflict in a relationship that's causing discord with you. It's making you feel like you're not balanced. And Mars has been retrograde since April, I believe. So that means it would have spent a lot of time in this area where there might be some sort of situation happening in your relationship, or there's more discord in your relationship than usual. So
Mm.
that's kind of how it works with the transits. But that's not the only thing I would look at, because I use a lot of traditional techniques that maybe some other astrologers don't
Mm.
use.
Mm.
If they're more modern astrologers, I'm a modern astrologer that likes to use traditional techniques. So
Yeah.
you might see a different astrologer and they might see something different. Like we all have our thing. It's all about who you connect with the most. So I always like to include my clients. I want it to be more of a conversation, like a counseling session. So like,
Mm.
what's going on in your life? How can I help you work with this Mars in your seventh house?
Yeah. So, okay. So this is a good point at which to just give you some details. So just, I suppose, just to confirm for the people who will be listening in, we did have a quick chat before we, hit record. But I don't think we shared too many details. Like I didn't give you, it's just more of a superficial catch up into how we've been doing and what we've been up to recently. And we didn't really share too many personal details. And I don't think I definitely didn't share any details about what I am doing career wise and what I've been doing recently. So
Yeah.
to let you know, so it's the 14th today. So yeah, 2 weeks ago, or just over 2 weeks ago, I actually quit my job.
Oh.
So, and that job was in medical communications.
Ooh,
So I do have a background in science. I actually have a PhD in clinical pharmacology.
I love it.
So I've been an academic for 10 or maybe even over 10 years. And then I've been doing this job, which essentially is consulting for pharmaceutical companies for the last, I think it would have been 4 years in January.
Okay.
Um, and the reason I quit my job was because I was looking and planning long term what I wanted to be doing for the next 30, 40, 50 years, as opposed to going from sort of dead end, well, not dead end job, but jobs that I was kind of interested in, but to be honest, I wasn't finding fulfilling. So
Yeah.
that's why I'd been really thinking about what I'll be doing long term for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And what I would like to do is to be doing the podcast, which obviously we're chatting about now, which, as we've discussed and all the viewers and followers and likers know, is about helping single millennials who are struggling with being lonely. It's kind of evolved recently into helping them with sort of more dating and relationships style advice. But like you said, it's a service helping people. That's essentially what it is. And when you mentioned about the planets being in that segment, obviously, in the last 3 or 4 months, I've had 70 or 80 different guests.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
so yeah, that's been connecting naturally to a lot of people. And
Yeah.
actually what I've done recently is been connecting other podcasters together, or other podcasters with other guests that I've had, to the point whereby next week when we do this LA based speed dating event, there's going to be 3 other girls who I've had on the show, who I'm going to be doing the event with, and 2 of them I connected together. They'd never met before. I just
Oh,
sent
wow.
an email to the 2 of them saying, I think you 2 would really get on. I think you can really benefit each other. So connect and chat and whatever. And in terms of the relationship, so I am single. I haven't been in a long-term relationship for quite a few years, actually. But what you mentioned about the relationships and not enjoying the conflict to hit the nail on the head, because, you know, with the last person that I seriously dated, yeah, I remember I can't remember why she got upset, but she did get really upset about something. I think I might have been communicating poorly, and I took it really personally, like, yeah, to the point where I was like, shit, you know, is there a future here, and what's
Mhm.
going to happen? I mean, we did end up breaking up. I
Mhm.
can't remember the exact reasons why, but I do remember that quite vividly, because it did take me aback, you know, her response or anger to something that I'd done, and then
Mhm.
me thinking, oh god, has this relationship got any legs?
Mhm.
And then, so what you were saying about, yeah, science and knowledge and personal development, I mean, I guess it's kind of one of those where a lot of people are sort of into that at the moment. But yeah, I did, um I think it was about a month ago, I did, yeah, sign up to a paid personal development course.
Oh, see?
um
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, again, it could be something that a lot of people are doing at the moment, but it was a very specific course that I had looked up, that actually, yeah, that I'd researched, looked at a few options before making the decision. But uh, yeah, I can see where you're coming from as well, with being decisive, but researching all the options before making the decision. It's what I do actually every January, because I change my car in January. So
Oh,
I'll
wow.
I'll often research, you know, the different, you know, efficiencies and miles per gallon and all of these things. But more often than not, I'll choose one of the first cars that I stumbled upon.
That's, that's
um,
funny.
but yeah, so I think, yeah, based on what you've said, I think that fills quite a lot of the information you gave. It was really
Yeah.
fascinating.
It's funny. And I like to, and obviously this is off the cuff. I like to, I can read off the cuff. I don't love doing it. I actually like to sit with the chart, and
Mhm.
I have like a worksheet that I really put a lot of notes in. That's just how
Yeah.
my mind operates. And so I want to like go over possibilities before I obviously start consulting with the person.
Mhm.
Because I never want to just make a, you know, even in astrology school, because I attend Kepler College, and it's a pretty renowned astrology school, and you can get like a diploma from there and everything. And I am all about continuing education. A lot of what comes up is how you show up in your readings, because we all, like, obviously I'm a person with my own experiences, and you don't want to project onto the client. So I try not to project any of my own experiences
Mhm.
onto what might be going on in your life. So like, that's why it's so important for it to be more of a conversation. And I don't need to know you. I can see a lot, but I also want to know, how do you experience that, right? Like, how is your chart being experienced by you? How do you see those things? And I'm just interested in people in general. I've
Mhm.
always been like a people person, and I have a moon in Aquarius. Aquarius is a sign of people. So I love seeing what makes people tick. I want to know about, and I like going deep. I want to know about what are your insecurities? Like, what happened in your life to make you this way? Because we all are just a product of our foundation, which is our childhood, right?
Mm.
And then we keep building on top of that. And then we go out into the world and we operate based on what we learned during that foundational time. And that's so important to know and to go back to that time and see what happened and work through those things so that you can show up better in your relationships. There's so many people, we just bring what we've learned to relationships. And then when you're in a relationship, you're dealing with someone that's dealing with those same things, and then they're showing up and we're trying to create a relationship where we're dealing with all of our past stuff together. That's complicated. It's never, it's never easy. Even when you find your most compatible partner, there's always going to be problems that show up. So relationships are, they're not easy. They're everyone wants one, but it's work. It's like a job.
Yeah, for sure. Before we carry on, are we do we need to see any more charts, or are we all good?
I think we're good. Yeah.
Okay, I will put us back into full screen.
Cool.
Yeah, and you've done it, no problem. But yeah, thank you for the assessment. We'll have to chat a bit more about that towards the end of the show. But obviously, naturally, I want to chat more about, say, the work that you've been doing, particularly with reference to millennials and what sort of struggles they're going through at the minute. Because, they're a different group of people. And obviously, you couple that with what we're going through globally, and it's like a recipe for chaos at the moment. So I'm just wondering, how has that been reflected in the work that you've been doing with them?
It's a great question. So, I mean, I am a millennial, technically. I was born in 84. So we're all in we're all in our 30s now, trying to figure life out. A little, I actually feel bad for Gen Z more, and the stuff that they kind of have to deal with and clean up with all that's going on in the world. But I think a lot of millennials, we were born during the Pluto and Scorpio era. And Pluto is, obviously, it's been downgraded to not a planet, I think now. I can never know the status of Pluto. But anyway, in astrology, it's a planet.
Well, to you, what is it?
You know what? It's a planet in astrology. I don't care if it's really considered a planet by, astronomy. The body of Pluto is very important in astrology, because when astrology was first, I mean, it's thousands and thousands of years old, right? So coming out ancient Egypt, and my name Tameri is the ancient name for Egypt. It was called Kemet or Tameri. So I have a very connection with ancient Egypt myself, and so astrology being practiced there, and then going to Greece and Rome, like in traditional, they only saw 7 planets. So in astrology, the 7 visible planets are very important. But then once these other planets started being discovered, so they discovered Uranus and Neptune and Pluto, the times when they were discovered kind of put the emphasis on the energy of the planet. And so Pluto is about going deep. It's about power. It's about death and rebirth. So breaking things down so that they're born again. It was attributed to be the modern ruler of Scorpio, which is a deep introspective sign already. And so when we have millennials born during this Pluto and Scorpio, where Pluto rules Scorpio, a lot of us are deep and introspective. We want more from life than just what we saw our parents or our grandparents working every day, marrying the first person they met. When you hear these stories, they're like, oh introduce me to the neighbor, we got married, and 2 months later, it's like, what? Like, that's how you met your partner? Like, you sign up for a lifelong thing by meeting someone, I mean, sometimes it worked, right? I kind of think sometimes the more simpler life and the simpler way of doing things maybe was better, or arranged marriage, these things have been proven to work, obviously. But it's almost like this generation, the thing that I noticed, because a lot of my clients are millennials, or most of them are, I would say. I'm getting a lot of Gen Z now, which is also interesting. That we want different, and we're all about going deep to find that. And it's almost like we don't want to settle. And I feel like a lot of that can be attributed to that whole Pluto and Scorpio era, and wanting to transform and continue to grow. And even if things have to die to be reborn, we're okay with going through that. And we're very resilient. I feel like millennials are very, and when you think about when we were born, a lot of us we got to see life before this technology boom, right? We saw life before smartphones, and
Before the
we had
internet.
landlines. Internet, yeah, landlines, like we played outside, like
Yeah,
there's
we
all
used to
these,
have a dial-up modem.
yeah, dial up, exactly. AIM, remember AIM, like all that we almost saw this happening. So we have the advantage of being pre this technology boom, but then also being a part of it and growing with it, so we know how to use it. So we're not, screwed like maybe some boomers, but
Mm,
we're not totally ingrained in it. We're Gen Z, where that's all they know. To me, that's very powerful,
mm.
because like you're able to kind of take social media with a grain of salt. Like we don't, it still affects all of us, obviously, but we can kind of disconnect from it and know that there's a life outside of it. And I think that's a strength, honestly. Dating for millennials, I feel like partnership is still important to us. Of course, I'm very general right now. We're all different. But I feel like that idea of family and a little bit of tradition is probably still important, but we're not willing to sacrifice our own happiness for it.
Mm.
And that's what I kind of notice showing up a lot in my practice and in people that I deal with.
Yeah, and the impact of social media, I don't think can be underestimated either, because I think like me, you probably have quite a pragmatic approach in that you know that people's lives aren't as perfect as they're made out to be on social media, but unfortunately, other people don't. And if you are seeing that and you're not realizing it, it would wear you down, because you're like, well, I'm just depressed at home, stuck in lockdown and with my family or whatever it is, and other people are still, I've seen other accounts where people are still posting pictures of them, not necessarily out, but it looks like they're having a great time all the time and doing this, that, and the other. It's like it's not real, but
Exactly.
you can
Never
see that, and
will.
for others, it's hard, man. It's really hard.
It is. Social media, I have a love hate with it, as
Yeah.
I suppose a lot of people do. It's great for being connected. Even technology in general, the fact that we can sit here and talk about this, like I would have never met you if it was, I mean, maybe I would have, I don't know.
Yeah.
But but then the idea that that's a whole nother universe.
Mm.
Like when you think your phone is a universe, like we live in this real universe, the phone is a universe of its own,
Mm.
where there's this magical land where everything's perfect, and people are fighting in the comments, or and there's so much discord that might not be going on in your real life, but you're in it because you're looking at this device. Like think about how crazy and powerful that is at the same time. So it's
Yeah.
really important for us to pick and choose when we use it, and for us to control it and not let it to control us.
Mm.
So turning off the phone. I think if you're trying to find a partner and you're dating, that can be great. You might meet people you would have never met on the street, but knowing that if someone swipes against you, that doesn't mean that you don't have any self-worth. You know what I mean? Like, if someone doesn't match with you, I don't even know what's going on the dating sites these days, but I'm assuming it's still like people getting matched or
Mm.
whatever. Even that you kind of have to take with a grain of salt, because they might not see your greatness in your picture. They might not see all the power and beauty that you can add to their life, because they're going off of a first impression. So you just kind of have to trust that the universe is going to connect you with the person that's supposed to see you and get to know you past this app.
Yeah, for sure. It's a very, yeah, it's a very tricky balance. Well, ironically, even from my point of view, it's a very tricky balance to maintain. And yeah, I'm not surprised so many people are struggling with it, because if obviously all these sort of feelings and emotions, I feel, are even more accentuated with the fact we are forced, to stay at home quite a lot at the moment. So
Yep.
naturally, you end up spending more time on your phone. But I do, on the flip side, find it incredible that, okay, you are forced to stay at home, but
Yeah.
even if you can't afford a computer or a laptop, you can start a business from your phone, either in the form of a blog or a podcast, or short videos you can upload to YouTube. And that in itself is incredible as well, because it's like you don't
Amazing.
even need a computer.
It's amazing. And the thing is, it's amazing, but it's also scary
Yeah.
because there's so many like false gurus out there too. And I think about this often. I'm like a very introspective person. So like I love that it's so accessible that anyone can kind of put a message out there and anyone can kind of, share their story. But there's also a danger in that as well, where there's a lot of like false prophets or people, they're good at getting popularity or getting popular through social media, but they don't really know what they're talking about, or they're not really an expert.
Mm.
Like, you kind of have to kind of take the good with the bad. But there's no doubt, I feel like we need it. And so I'm happy that we have this. But yeah, that's why it's so important to know yourself and to have limits and boundaries and really put yourself on a path to where you're happy. Like, that's so important. What makes you happy?
Yeah, and how are you pushing your clients, or how do you advise your clients to do this, to get to the point where they kind of appreciate their own self-worth, and they are at the point where they are happy? Because it's like, I see a lot of memes out there on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, saying these sorts of things, but actually getting to the crux of the detail to get to that point is really difficult.
It is. And it's difficult for people. Like, remember we were looking at the chart, I was saying like that part's more personal, or
Mm.
you had a lot of planets in your first house. I have a lot of planets in my first house. Naturally, people who have that are already very strong-willed people who maybe kind of march to the beat of their own drum, or they're more comfortable focusing on themselves. If you had planets that were in the opposite side in the seventh house, that means a lot of your energy is dependent on what people think of you. And we all have that. But I mean, for some people, it might be more than others. So that's why I have to look at each chart and assess, how can I get through to this person? What's their Mercury? How can I communicate with them so that they get the point I'm trying to
Mm.
make?
Mm.
So I look at that. So let's say someone, I mean, you have Mercury in Libra, you're a very rational person. You probably like facts and truth because you have so many planets and air signs. So if I'm going to say, here, let's list out all the things that have happened in your life. I'm going to make up a fake scenario. Let's say you're dating. Let's say you had a belief that you were ugly. I'm just making something up. I'm like, okay, you have all these planets in Libra. You're irrational. You have Mercury in Libra. You have Venus in Libra. Looks are very important. I might have you list out all the times someone gave you a compliment or said you were attractive, or you know what I mean? Like, there's certain ways to work with certain people based on their chart that will get through to them. And then the other thing that I like to do is to have people do like grounding exercises or things that kind of detach them from the world that we're in. So I'll do visualizations, especially during my Reiki treatment. So I'll have them sit there and I'll have like meditation music on, and I'll talk to them and I'll do like a guided meditation for them to kind of take them out of that moment. That's another thing that I do. It kind of differs client to client. I don't have like a one-stop approach. I mean, I do definitely use a lot of the same tools, but
Mm.
I approach it differently depending on who I'm talking to, just because I can see how they're going to process information in their chart.
Mm. Have you studied neuro-linguistic programming as well? Struggling to
I
get
have
the words
it,
out.
like hypnotism.
No, well, basically what you were describing there with the visualization techniques kind of overlaps with, a technique I've seen in neuro-linguistic programming,
Yeah.
which is, it's kind of like the technique of anchoring. So say if, you know, I'm just trying to imagine a scenario. Well, I guess we're doing the whole dating thing. So, you want to be better at dating. So you take a factual time in which you did well at dating. I don't know, you approached a girl in a bar and you got her number, and then so you imagine that, but you really sort of sit down and try and feel all of the senses of that time, and
Oh,
then
yeah.
it gives you something to recollect. Say if your confidence is a bit low, and you can go, yeah, you know what, there was that time where I talked to the girl, we got on really well, and I got a number and we dated. It just sounded very similar to what you were
Yes.
describing, but naturally with all these things, there's always going to be some sort of overlap.
Exactly. And I think what you're describing is that can be considered like manifestation. That could
Mm.
be considered, I guess, quantum physics. So, I mean, there's so many different
Yeah.
scientific terms. There's psychology, and psychology, I know they have different techniques. So for me, I've never actually like gone to school, like I don't have a degree in that, but it's very much a part of my business because it's something that I've practiced through my different spiritual systems, or when I've studied with different spiritual gurus, or I've had spiritual work done for me. Visualization, we know, is effective. Especially even for athletes. I mean, we know this has actually been proven. So I think with anything, it's important for you to envision what outcome you want before you even go on the journey. And if you can't get clear on that, then of course it's going to be hard for you to create what you want in your life. So
yeah, is that something that can you think of a specific time where you've done that, or a
yeah.
specific goal where you've gone, you know what, I want to do that, so I'm going to imagine it, and it's happened?
Oh yeah, I'm a master manifester, almost to the point where I'm trying to take a step back from it and trust more that things that happen for me are happening in divine timing. Because I think when we get too specific, sometimes we don't know what's best for us, right? We might want something and it might not be the best case scenario for us. And maybe this other outcome eventually leads to something better. A most recent example, I mean, the most silly example is cars, right? Like I'm a person, like I like nice cars. So if I want a specific car, I might say, I want that car. Like I'll literally say, I want the car. I might cut it out. I might put it in my planner, or vision boards are so popular now. Whatever. I know people relate to vision boards. They use it. But for me, I'll really focus on that. I'll imagine myself driving that car. And then I'll start to see the car more. And obviously this could just be coincidence, right? You notice it more because it's on your mind. And so with my last car, I did that. I was like, I want that car. Like, and my husband at the time, we were just dating. I don't even think we were engaged yet. And we go to the dealership. I'm like, well, let's just go to the dealership. We showed up, and I'm like, told the guy, I was like, oh, I just want to drive it, because it wasn't time for me to get a car at the time, but I just wanted to kind of get the energy moving. So he's like, oh, we only have one on the entire lot. And so he took me to the car. I drove it. Of course, I loved it. And we started crunching the numbers. It was more than I wanted to spend monthly. And I was like, oh, I don't want to. I don't know. Maybe I should just wait. And then he was like, well, we can get you in this other car. I was like, I don't want that car. So then my husband is like, I'll pay the difference. He was my husband at the time, by the way. He's like, I'll pay the difference so you can have the car you want, which was obviously, that's a blessing.
Very sweet gesture.
And so I got the car. But the next day, which was crazy, the guy that I was like trading in my other car, he called me, the guy that sold me the car, and he says, I wasn't supposed to sell you that car. It was the only one we had on the lot, and it belonged to someone. They had already put the deposit down on the car. That's why there was no sticker price on it. There was no, and so I was like, this was supposed to be my car. like I took it as like, not only was it the only one on the lot, it would belong to someone else. They'll get another car. Like they'll find them another one, whatever. But it ended up being like having more features than I wanted. And I was like, I manifested this car. So that's like a silly example, but like, that's how powerful it is. So like, I'm a person, when I know I want something, it's like, I know I can get it, but it's like, is it the best thing for me, and why do I want it? So I like to get people down to like, if you want a relationship, why do you want to be in a married? Like, what do you think you have to offer in a marriage? Because it's not only about you being pleased, it's about the other person being pleased. Yeah. So I gave a superficial example, but like, I think you can apply that methodology to anything in your life.
Yeah, so I just want to make 2 points here. So I spoke to John Gray a couple of weeks ago. He wrote Men Are From Mars and Women Are From
Oh, yes,
Venus.
classic. I've never actually read that book, but obviously.
Well, it was a fascinating discussion. And what he was, so we were chatting a little bit about the concepts that you've just alluded to. And one of them, which he used, was the fact that he wanted to be like this, 10 times best-selling author. So I asked him, but how did you go about doing that? Because obviously that's happened, but obviously it didn't just happen overnight, or it's not as though you imagined it and it magically happened. And he went, well, no, obviously that's, in the real world, that is never going to happen. You can't just expect to have 10 best-selling books without putting in the work to write them. Yeah. But he said that what he was able to do was he wrote his first one, which I think was mildly successful, but it, you know, it wasn't even that good. But he was able to take the experience and satisfaction of having had one of his books published and just take that imagination and just sort of multiply it by a factor of 10. So
Mm.
it's based on reality, but the end goal, obviously, he still needs to achieve. And then he said that because he was able to do that, so he would literally do it on flights where, you know, he would sort of be sitting in his seat, not listening to anything, just imagining himself as not just having one published book, but having 10 that were bestsellers.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that by doing that on a consistent basis, it meant his behavior was all geared towards achieving that goal. And yeah, he was saying something like, yeah, so for the last few years, he's not had a Netflix account or something like that because he just doesn't watch any TV. And even if he does watch TV, it's for 20 minutes because it's like, well, it's not getting me towards my goal. So what is the point? And I'm not interested in that anyway. I want to write these books. So what you were saying just marries up with that. Obviously, two very different examples, but principally the same thing. And then he started going into the sort of complexity of neuroplasticity in the brain, which I'm not going to explain now because, to be honest, I didn't fully understand it. So I need to re-listen to the conversation. And then the other point I wanted to pick you up on was you mentioned dream boards. So literally, this was yesterday or the day before. For some reason, there was just something inside me where I wanted to do another dream board. So it was an exercise I did 4 years ago on a different business course where they said you get a load of magazines, you sit in a quiet room for maybe 30 or 40 minutes, and you cut out all the pictures that resonate with you and you stick them on your board. I did it slightly differently because I took a PowerPoint slide and then I just Google imaged words that meant something to me and then picked the image that resonated the most with me and stuck it on this PowerPoint slide. And so it's really fascinating you brought it up because the other day I was looking at my one that I did 4 years ago more closely, and the amount of stuff I could tick off was incredible. So say, for example, it's actually behind my laptop, so I am paying attention. I'm not ignoring you. But so, for example, there's a guitar on there, and I've been learning that properly for the last maybe 12 or 18 months. There's a guy dressed in a black suit, and that to me was representing having, basically, I wanted a new wardrobe. You know, I wanted a couple of nice watches, some nice jeans and shirts and stuff like that. There was a cool car there, which represented basically this Mazda MX-5 that I ended up buying because I just really wanted it. I've got like images of the podcast, the Apple Podcast logos, and some travel photos that I have been to and stuff like that. And yeah, I just, what you were saying just really, really hit me because it's the exact exercise I did 4 years ago. And I thought now is a good time to sort of have a refresher and think about, what do I want now? Because over time, you know, we evolve and change and our priorities change, and what you want and why you want them changes as well.
Yeah, and I love that you said this because this is a synchronistic moment for me. Like synchronicity, if people are familiar with that term, Jungian term, things happening and not knowing, like it's like a reminder, right? So this morning when I was in the shower randomly, I have this book. It's called, here it is. It's called Where Will You Be 5 Years from Today? My ring light. And I thought about this book and I said, oh, I need to look back at that book to see what I wrote. Because the book basically, you're planning out your life. What do you, 5 years from now, what do you want it to be like? And I was like, I need to look at the book to see where I am and how I'm connected with that book. So what you just said is almost like along those lines, because I totally forgot that I thought about that in the shower until you said it right now. And even yesterday, so I think we're in the Scorpio new moon right now. It was yesterday. Let me confirm that. Well, it won't matter because your viewers will probably see this later.
Yeah, it'll be in
it won't even be relevant. Yeah, it's actually today. So on new moons, I always tell my clients, like, new moons are about new beginnings and, you know, writing down what you want to happen. And then full moons are about them coming to fruition or completions. And so I'll have a lot of times people, when there's a new moon close to their sign or hitting a point in their chart, I'll have them manifest or write what they want. And so I was big on this. Like I still am, but I did it religiously for years. And like I said, I mentioned when I was like manifesting the type of husband I wanted, I would make sure to do it on a new moon. But yesterday in Scorpio, I mentioned I have a lot of planets in Scorpio. It's more powerful because I have all these planets in my chart. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to get specific because I have created a lot in my life and I'm happy with it. But it's this point of when you get what you ask for, it's kind of anticlimactic, right? It's like going shopping. Eventually that toy or whatever is not going to fulfill you anymore. Like I literally said to myself, there was a time where you prayed for the things you wanted now. Are you appreciating those things right now? And so last night, this all ties together. I'm a part of this subscription box. This is like a tree. It's called the Giving Tree. And there's this brand of tea that I'm in love with. It's called Magic Hour Tea. And the owner, Zena, she's very spiritual. And long story short, I'm into this brand and I drink their teas all the time. I have my tea here. And the Giving Tree asks for you to write everything you're thankful for. So I really last night, instead of this new moon, I just wrote all the things that I'm thankful for in my life now, like making sure that I'm appreciating those things because how would I feel if I lost them because I wasn't appreciative? I mean, it's gratitude. And B, it's important to be content because we're in a world where we always want. And I'm a Taurus. I love stuff. Like I love nice things. I love buying. I love luxury. Like, and it gets old after a while. Not old. Like I'm always going to like those things, but it's important to enjoy the things that you've manifested. And so this conversation reminds me of everything that I've been thinking of for the shower this morning, last night, writing my gratitude tree and all those. And so I love to work with people on those things, but I also like to get to the root of why they want those things. So you want a rich husband. Well, why? Did you grow up in lack? Did you feel like your needs weren't being met when you were a child? Do you have, are there self-worth issues? Do you feel like if you marry this person, it makes you valuable because now you have money? Like, because maybe you don't even want that. You know what I mean? Like some people, I think they want things, but they don't know themselves enough to know what they need instead of what they want. So for me, it's a little bit complex. It's not just about manifesting. Manifesting is this word that we throw around. You can manifest anything, but is it going to make you happy?
And that was a whole big thing for me with the career, because it was kind of career and money, because I always thought, I wanted to earn lots of money. It was a very sort of family orientated thing that success was defined by how much money you earn. I mean, it's not quite as superficial as that, but that was one of the key factors to represent success. But then, I did one of these self-improvement and business development courses, and they really got stuck into, why do you actually want to earn loads of money, or how much do you want to earn, or how much do you want to earn a month, and what do you want to buy, and what do you want to pay for? And basically, long story short, when we got to the crux of it, I did realize actually it's not about earning X amount to feel really good. It's actually just about earning enough to get by, but it's more important for me to be doing something that I find fulfilling and that I look forward to getting, waking up to every day, as opposed to earning, millions of pounds or whatever it is. And that was really interesting. So I certainly appreciate a lot of the things you've said. And another question I had for you, because you chatted about manifesting, your husband or the car. Did you have like a physical way of putting down your manifestations? Did you write dream boards or lists of the things that you wanted from the things that you wanted?
Absolutely. I mean, the physical part is so important because that's the tangible. That's what makes it reality. And so like I've done a million vision boards. I've been doing vision boards for a very long time. So that's one way. Writing and journaling is another way, because we know putting a pen to pencil helps with your memory more than just typing it out. So I think sometimes writing things are powerful, and also following up with the action. So the manifesting part is not just you putting in, a wish and then it miraculously coming true. It's like you have to make effort to make that dream come true. So I can't just walk into Mercedes-Benz and get a car. Like I need to make sure that I actually have the money to pay for that car. I have good credit. I have, you know what I mean? There's all these other things that I have to do to get that car. So for me, it's about being aligned and making sure that I'm putting myself in the best position so that the outcome that I want is going to happen. The universe takes care of the rest. The universe puts that car there that belongs to someone else, you know, but like I had to have X amount of money ready to pay the down payment, you know, it's all these things. So, or maybe if you didn't have any money, you could manifest that car, but maybe it's in a way where you got like a big break and you got some payout, but what did you have to sacrifice for that? So that's where it gets a little bit tricky, because you don't want, and that when you asked about the magic, I love magic, but I also, when you do things, you're creating everything in the world has to go someplace, right? So if one action happens, another reaction happens. That's just, wasn't that Newton's law or whatever? I don't know.
Yeah, for
Whatever.
every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction.
Exactly. So and this is where it can get dangerous. So let's say you're like, oh, I really, really want a house. How am I going to get a house? And then you do magic and for this house, but then your parent dies and that's how you get the money for that. You know what I mean? Like there's just all these things that can happen. That's why I feel like there's a fine line when it comes to asking for things, because you don't want a action that you didn't want to be the result of how you got, or that you got it what you wanted because of that action, if that makes sense. So I don't know, it's tricky. And I think that's why for me it's more important to settle into what is best for me. I can trust the universe. I'm on the right path. And I always follow my spirit. I've always done that. So I try to learn to lean in, to trust that I'm on the right journey and all the chips will fall where they may. Like even with the astrology, I'm a person that, you know, I feel like I live in Los Angeles. I mean, it's expensive. Like you have to have money. And I remember being so into my spiritual practice, and I saw one of my spiritual people that I see, and I'm like, I really want to quit my job. I'm not happy at this job. Like it's stressful. And I would go to her like every year, and she's like, well, if you quit, you're going to be broke. Like you're not ready. Like the time is not now, and timing is so important. And I really struggle with that because I saw it like, if I can't make my salary that I'm making from my day job in my business, I'm not successful. I saw it like that, when that wasn't true. And then when I started to let go of that, my day job, which is product development, business in skincare, started to merge with my astrology business. I mean, my name is the Astro Fashionista. So that's kind of the whole play on like I'm into beauty and fashion. And so I started to get gigs for beauty brands where I was doing readings through people I had worked with, or I started writing articles for, you know, websites that were beauty oriented, and the world started to collide to where now I've totally embraced it. I'm like, oh, this is a part of the journey. I have chills right now because I know I'm in the right place. And so I'm like, this is the journey, and I don't know exactly what's coming up from it, but I know it's going to be big. I can feel it, you know? So it's almost like trusting that all of our experiences lead to where we need to be. And so I think people should more focus on where they are now and be grateful and present, even in a pandemic where this is the hardest time to be grateful for what's going on. But like, we'll never get this time back. We're never going to experience this again. So we need to be present in it.
Yeah, that's why it amazed me at the start of the pandemic when, you know, we had like this group, work WhatsApp group chat or whatever. And, you know, people were saying in it, yeah, it sucks that we've got to go into lockdown, but yeah, I guess we just have to put life on pause for 6 months and then come out of it the other side and, you know, start going out again. I was like, that is not how things work. I mean, if that's your approach, that's fair enough. But I mean, you could die in those 6 months and then fucks. Like you're definitely not getting that time back. So for me, again, I mean, you might be able to sort of strip back the specifics, but for me, once lockdown hit, I was like, okay, it sucks, but actually, what are the opportunities that are going to come from it? And for us, it was about recruiting our speakers in a different way. And obviously it's opened up the fact that I've been able to connect with people from all over the world. So yeah, completely. I get exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, because it's like life is not like I feel like people are, I can't travel. It's like, yeah, it sucks. We all want to be. I had to cancel my amazing birthday trip. I wasn't excited about that, but like at the end of the day, this is happening on a global level for a global reason. Like, this proves how connected we are as humans. If people didn't believe it now, you can see we are all ripple effects of each other. And so we have to kind of lean into it, focus on what makes you happy during this time, focus on what energizes you during this time, and go with it. Like, life isn't on pause. Life is still happening. I'm still going to be 37 next year, like, no matter what happens in the pandemic or not. So I'm going to make this year the best year that I can make it, because I don't know what's going to happen. Like you said, like, you can die in those 6 months. And so I know it's hard for people, because it sucks. It's not fun. But I really try to, give people the tools, or encourage them to do something that'll make them grow during this time, if I can, especially if I see that in their chart.
Yeah, for sure. So in the interest of time, I've got another couple of questions which I'd like to discuss before we wrap up, because I know you've got some appointments a little bit later as well, and it's probably coming up for lunchtime for you guys, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was just wondering, say with the people, and we've specifically focused on millennials. With the millennials you've worked with, how often would they be coming to you, and how long would you work with them for?
Yeah, people always ask me this. So I did have a coaching program. For me, I like to base it on what that person feels like. If they feel the urge to see me every month, I'm happy to do that. But I think there gets to a point where you're just like, you're not in charge of your life. You're coming to me because you want me to tell you what you should do. I'm not in the business of that. I don't want to run anyone's life. I don't want to make decisions for people. I want to be a source of inspiration for them. And so there's a fine line between that. So I would say a healthy way to approach astrology would be, start with having a reading for the year. Like, what does my year look like? What should I be focusing on this year? That's great.
And when should they have that reading? Should it be every January?
Every January is great, or their birthday, because during your birthday, it's like your solar return. So then I can say, well, over the next 12 months, because you step into a new energy on your birthday. So a lot of people come during that time. So that's great. I would say, there's different, you could do it bi-annually. And the most I would do it is probably once a month. And in that case, it's more about planning out your months. And that's more like a coaching program where it's like, okay, this month you're going to focus on this, especially if it's more like business oriented for someone where they want me to help them with their career. I can say, okay, well, this month, this is what's going on in your career. This is where you should be putting your energy. I feel like that's a healthy balance. Anything more often where you're trying to see me every week, like, I'm going to be like, I can't, like, the astrology is changing, but what are you doing in between those times? Have you even acted on any of the things I told you to act on, So I would say once a month is good. But then in between that, you might want a Reiki session, because I give Reiki, or, maybe you just want a quick like card pull or something like that. So it kind of depends on how often the person, like what the person feels like. I like when I have repeat clients, obviously, because it confirms that they feel like I've helped them in some way, but I definitely don't want to be running their life for them.
Yeah, I guess, it's great to work with them repeatedly, but I guess at some point it's like, well, clearly the work we're doing isn't working. So finding that balance.
Like, I think that's more for your therapist. Like, you can see your
Yeah.
therapist every week, because those are emotions you want to get out. But like me, I like to make it I want to give you practical things to do on the astrology, because I'm a practical person. So that's important for me.
Yeah, cool. And one final question. So, with the wealth of experience that you've accumulated, and taking into account what's going on now, what would be your specific advice for millennials trying to navigate the current complex world of not just online dating, but just trying to improve their own lives as well?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a loaded one.
Yeah.
Well, first I would say, obviously as an astrologer, I would say if you've never had your astrology chart done, get it done. And I don't say, like, I think those apps, it's like CoStar and the Pattern app is like two of the most popular astrology apps that people are on now. And those are pretty decent. Those are good. But I would say see an actual astrologer, because an app is just, it's an algorithm. Like, they've loaded, copy, and then it goes out, whatever. So I would say start with having your chart done to really get to know yourself from that perspective, if you've never done it before. And then once you have that information, you can say, oh, you know, my moon is this in this sign. Your moon is about what your emotional needs are. It's, to me, that's like one of the most important things in your entire chart. People identify with their sun sign so much, like you being a Libra, me being a Taurus, but your moon is what you really need at the core, at your soul, like what you need. So once you know that, then you can kind of start to say, oh, well, then I need a partner that speaks to that moon in this way. I need someone that provides security through this way. And then once you know that, you're able to make more informed decisions when you're dating, right? Because you can weed out the people that aren't meeting. You know, I feel like most people on the first or second date, you kind of, some people might take a while to warm up to them, but you kind of get a sense of who someone is in your first couple conversations or interactions with them. And if they're not meeting those needs because you know yourself so well, then you can move on and not waste your time. And I think right now for millennials, we're all in a crucial time. We're in our 30s, and your 30, your 20s is all fun and it felt like it, you know, no. And then once we get 30, and by the way, there's a thing called your Saturn return, and that happens. It's like the changing of the guard when you move to adulthood. All of a sudden time is like starts flying and you feel like, wow, I have to really accomplish something. So now that we're in our 30s, we're all thinking, especially if you're a woman and your clock's ticking and you know you want to have children, and men, like maybe you've gone through dating a lot and now you're like, man, I want to settle down. I really want someone that I wish I had in the pandemic with me to like watch Netflix or whatever. And so time for us is so crucial. So I think just weeding out the people that you're not compatible with starts with knowing yourself, because then you don't waste your time on these dating prospects that aren't going to go anywhere. So I hope I answered the question in some way. I think it everything starts with yourself.
Yeah.
It all comes back to you.
Yeah, there's a perfect sound bite right there.
Yeah.
I'll be posting that as soon as possible. But no, I mean, thank you for taking the time to answer the question, and all the questions I've had today. It has been really, what's the best way to put it? It's been an education speaking to you, and I really appreciate you reading my chart as well. That's much appreciated. I'll find out the correct time, and I'll have to send that to you and see if it changes it too much. But yeah, really appreciate your time, and I can't wait to connect again, hopefully in the not too distant future.
I would love that. I love talking and connecting. So awesome.
Excellent. You take care.
You too.